Today we're going to talk about how I take care of my Green Bottle Blue Tarantula. So what are we waiting for? The Chromatopelma cyaneopubescens, also known as the Green Bottle Blue Tarantula or GBB. This is a New World semi-arboreal tarantula that comes from northern Venezuela. They are considered to have a medium growth rate and reach a leg span from 4.5 to 6 inches when full grown. There seems to be some confusion about what semi-arboreal means. Essentially, these are terrestrial tarantulas. They are opportunistic burrowers, so you definitely need to set them up as a terrestrial. This semi-arboreal aspect means that in addition to doing some burrowing, they will also web up the area around them if you give them plenty of anchor points. This is essentially my favorite type of tarantula behavior. Males of this species only live 3 or 4 years, but the females can live up to as long as 14 years. These tarantulas have mild venom, but they do have urticating hairs that they will not hesitate to kick if they feel threatened or disturbed. This is a wonderful spider, as mine stays out on display most of the time. They're gorgeous and very enjoyable to observe. Even though they appear docile, they can be very skittish and bolt extremely quickly. Mine are prone to kick hairs and then quickly dive into their burrows anytime I'm spot cleaning their enclosure or adding some water to their dish. So this is not a tarantula that I would suggest you try to handle. They have an amazing feeding response and quickly pounce and take down prey as soon as it is offered. Like most tarantulas, they will refuse food when in pre-molt. So if your GBB is refusing to eat for weeks or even months and is spending a lot of time hiding in its burrow or in its web tunnels, don't worry. It is probably just in pre-molt and will come back out with a voracious appetite once it's done molting. This species is also a very heavy webber and will make a series of intricate tunnels and web up most of its enclosure over time. So building an enclosure with plenty of anchor points for their webbing is very important. If you want to see a video on my top 10 picks for the heaviest webbing tarantulas, I will link that video above right now. Technically, this tarantula is an opportunistic burrower that shows semi-arboreal tendencies in captivity. Semi-arboreal means they are a ground-dwelling spider, but will web up slightly above the ground. And this should not be confused as meaning they are an arboreal tarantula. And they should never be kept in arboreal enclosures because that can be very dangerous for them. Now, real quick, before we get into the specifics of the husbandry for this species, I wanted to take a second and thank the sponsor of today's video, Spider Shop. Right now, through September, when you use the code GBBCARE at spidershop.com, you will get $20 off a pair of Chromatopelma cyaneopubescens that are around 3 inches in size. That's 1 female and 1 male for $148. Spider Shop is an online tarantula dealer with over 100 5-star reviews on Facebook. You can follow them on Instagram or Facebook to see all of their breeding projects. With over 100 species available, nationwide shipping, and competitive prices, you should definitely check them out, even if you're not in the market for a Green Bottle Blue. And be sure to check back often because they are having a back to school sale starting soon. Thank you so much, Spider Shop, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to this tarantula's care. Now, I keep my spiderlings in the Tarantula crib spiderling enclosures, or an enclosure similar in size. I fill the enclosure up at least halfway so they have plenty of substrate in which they can burrow, but I also put in some small pieces of cork bark or other decorations so they can do some webbing above the ground. For juveniles, I move them into an acrylic enclosure that is about 3 times their leg span horizontally and vertically at a minimum. Something like the medium slider crib or 8-inch tarantula cube from Tarantula cribs. I set up my GBB enclosures by filling the enclosure about halfway up with substrate, as I have noticed mine sometimes will burrow a little, especially as juveniles. I provide a cork bark hide like I would for any terrestrial, and then I add long pieces of cork bark or branches and some plants or other decorations to give the tea some anchor points for its webbing and some things it can easily climb vertically. Then, when they have outgrown that enclosure, I move them into their permanent adult home. A good example of the size I keep mine in would be the Tarantula Crib's 12-inch cube enclosure or a large slider enclosure, which would provide plenty of room. I wouldn't go any smaller for a tarantula this size, but you can go as big as a 10-gallon terrestrial style enclosure if you want to really give them a whole lot of room. The Green Bottle Blue prefers an arid environment, which makes their husbandry very easy. Keep the substrate dry and the water dish full, and this tea will thrive. Like most tarantulas, this spider is fine being kept at room temperature. So if you're reasonably comfortable, then your spider's most likely pretty comfortable. As far as feeding, I feed my smallest spiderlings flightless fruit flies or confused flower beetles once or twice a week. As they grow a little larger, I feed pre-killed small crickets, though these spiderlings get large quick and will be able to take down live small crickets on their own in no time. Juveniles, I will feed 1 or 2 medium crickets a week, usually a cricket about the size of the tarantula's abdomen, but no larger than 2/3 the size of the tea. And as adults, I base the amount and frequency on the size of their abdomen. As a rough guideline, I will plan on feeding 5 to 7 large crickets or a couple large adult dubia roaches every 2 to 3 weeks. Personally, my Green Bottle Blues rarely will eat dubia roaches, but are always quick to pounce on crickets or mealworms I drop on their webbing. But individual specimens' tastes will vary, I am sure. If their abdomen is skinnier than their carapace, I will feed more prey more often. But once their abdomen begins to get larger in width than the carapace, I will begin cutting back on the amount and frequency of feeding until it enters pre-molt. Overall, this is an amazing spider, and it is no secret they are my all-time favorite tarantula. They are one of the jewels of my collection, and I keep them prominently displayed at all times. I highly recommend adding this species to your collection if you have not already. And if you want some more in-depth information on the location, environment, and just some other interesting facts about the Chromatopelma cyaneopubescens, I will link my nature documentary style video on this spider right here. As always, I appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for buying Tarantula Collective merchandise, and I will see you next Tuesday. Rarely will eat Dobie. God.